Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi standing by online. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
Good. I have to tell you that train crash was crazy yesterday, wasn't it? With these Republican congressmen, and there's a dump truck or a garbage truck sitting on the tracks. I was shocked to hear that there are 3 to 5 or 6 of these types of accidents every single day around the country.
Yeah, you hear it a lot, especially with these crossings, and it's a terrible thing that happens, but there's a lot of work that has to go into these crossings. A lot of them have to be upgraded. We've seen locally some accidents at crossings in our region, so it is sad, and definitely is a wake-up call as to why we have to do a better job with our infrastructure here in the country.
I do have to ask, it was brought up this morning by, I'll give you 2 guesses, only one, Mr. Zecca, and he's saying, listen, this is all the more reason why the hospital downtown is in this red zone. While I don't necessarily agree, I do agree that maybe something needs to be looked at when it comes to the safety of our rail lines and carrying these toxic chemicals across the state. What's your thought on all this?
You know, the hospital is well away from the train lines. At the hospital, the new hospital constructions are built with fireproof outsides, everything. I mean, they're really technologically advanced. It's really just another scare tactic on the part of certain people that want to try and prevent this thing from happening. But, you know, I kind of laugh a little bit because no one seemed to mind the train tracks when there was housing back there. People were living right next to the train tracks. No one's talking about moving the auditorium, which houses 4,000 people, 3 or 4 nights a week. No one's talking about moving the police station or various other businesses that are back there, but want to use it as a tactic to try and, scare people against the hospital downtown. But believe me, the folks at the hospital have talked to DOT, are very well aware of the scenario and are very comfortable that this is not a problem.
Putting the hospital aside, is it a problem, though? Is it something that we're looking at, the fact that these chemicals are being transported across the state and potentially there could be accidents, and are we prepared for that statewide?
Well, there's not only a problem with it across the state, it's across the country, as you have this very flammable form of oil that's being transported from the western states and Canada to the northeast to be shipped out on train cars out of the Albany port there. The state has done a lot to try and upgrade safety precautions along its train tracks. The issue is that a lot of this is governed at the federal level. Railroads have broad say over the right-of-way that they control for these tracks. So there has to be more done at the federal level, too, to improve the safety precautions. But the state has tried to do what it can within its borders to regulate this, and hopefully we don't see those kinds of accidents here.
I want to ask you on your reaction to the President's State of the Union the other night.
Yeah, I thought it was a good speech. I appreciate his call for bipartisanship and unity, but to me, the devil's always in the details, and the things he talked about I certainly can get on board with are upgrades to our crumbling infrastructure. It's something we've been hearing a lot about for the last year and a half, but have not seen any kind of plan to do that. His call for more trade schools to get folks who are seeking certain skills to get into the trades or manufacturing is something that I have worked on a lot here in the state over the last 5-6 years with a career in technical education diploma, fighting the opioid crisis. These are all very good things, and I hope that the extremists on both sides of the aisle can get out of the way and hopefully come together and get some of these things done. Immigration reform is another one, where right now the problem that we have in Washington is in Congress we have both sides, the extremes driving the conversation. It's ridiculous, and while I hope it's an olive branch that he's extending, the true measure will be in the next few weeks as we face another government shutdown.
Manaski.
You're very positive on the president's speech, and at least you're identifying some things that you feel that you would completely agree with. Am I understanding you're saying the extremists need to get out of the way so the centrist President Trump can come in and unite both parties?
I actually gotta say this about the president, and people say this all the time to me. I actually get criticism for it, but I feel the job of a representative is to disagree with the president when you should, to work with the president when you can, but always be fair and independent and put the best interests of the people you represent first. And look, if the president wants to work on infrastructure, I would want to work with him on infrastructure. I don't agree with all his immigration policies, but I feel like that deep down inside, the president wants to just get deals done.
Right.
I think he's a deal maker. And sometimes I believe that he has certain extreme elements within his own staff, whether it's people like Stephen Miller or others who are more hardline, that somehow derail the conversation. So as we get close to immigration deals and things with the Democrats, a few hours later it seems to, fall off the table once some of the more extreme elements of Congress and more extreme elements of his own administration get into his ear. So we'll see.
Even
I think deep down he wants to get these deals done.
Even an olive branch on when it comes to the Dreamers and a pathway to citizenship, you're talking about he's getting criticism from the far right part of his party there, and that might be what could get something done. Obviously, it needs to be you got to help fund the wall, but
right.
That seemed like an olive branch to me.
To me, too. Again, the devil is always in the details.
Yeah.
But the majority of Americans seem to agree that these, hundreds of thousands of folks who came to this country as children, through no fault of their own, who have since then served in our military, who have become teachers and professionals, who are taxpayers, we should not send them back to a country that they have never known all their life, especially if they're serving our country. That makes no sense to me. But again, when the extreme elements get involved, we have a problem. Now, on the other side, the Democrats have supported in prior administrations funding for a border wall. First of all, any expert will tell you it's impossible to put a wall across the entire border of the United States and Mexico. You got the Rio Grande, you got other geographic limitations that prevent you from putting a wall up. But in certain locations, it makes sense, and we have to have enhanced border security. A wall could be a part of that. It's not going to work everywhere, but let's compromise and say, okay, Mr. President, we can work with you on certain elements of the border wall and enhanced border security, which is, again, something I think everyone agrees on. But also, we have to come up with a solution to these dreamers, which both Democrats and Republicans agree about. But again, get the darn extremes out of the conversation who want to just end all legal immigration to this country, I think.
Well, it's the way government's supposed to work. There's give and take, and it's the only way anything can get done, and it doesn't seem like anything is getting done right now. Quickly, I have less than a minute. On the issue of the Westside Senior Center and that grant money, in a nutshell, can you tell us what you've done? They say they're reaching out to you repeatedly, and you've done nothing to help them.
Well, it's a complete falsehood. The truth of the matter is, I a few years ago secured a grant for the Westside Senior Center. It was for an exercise program and for some intergenerational programs and a horticulture program. The grant was awarded, and as they're going through the paperwork, the state and the Office of Aging and Division of Budget found that the Westside Senior Center was out of compliance with their worker compensation insurance. They had employees on the books that were not covered for workers' compensation insurance.
I am almost out of time, but actually, if you could you hold for a second? We'll just go through the news. I just want to get your final take on this. We'll do it right at the end of the news. Okay, Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi on right now, and an issue that was brought up, in fairness, by Jim Zecca, Westside Senior Center. To be fair, they're big supporters of Congresswoman Tenney, claiming it's all politics. The reason they're not receiving that grant money, they say they've contacted the Assemblyman several times, weekly actually, and nothing has been done. So let's once and for all give you an opportunity to answer that.
Yeah, again, untrue, and you're right, they are big supporters. I secured a grant for the Westside Senior Center. It was for an educational program, horticulture program, exercise program. In the process of securing the grant, it was found out that they had some employees on the books that they weren't paying or weren't covering for workers' compensation insurance. The state, before they hand out a grant, if the entity has tax liens or unpaid workers' compensation insurance, the state won't release the money to them until that's all cleared up. I told that to the Westside Senior Center. It's not politics. I would never have gotten a grant for them in the first place if I didn't want to give them a grant. Right. If it was politics. So they've submitted paperwork. We've submitted it to the Division of Budget. It is a process. The problem that I have now is that the state's not even sure if they are able to execute the original purpose of the grant because they're having a lot of financial difficulties over there. I think they believe this grant is just going to be able to go to pay back bills or things like that, which it's not. You can't do that. It's for a specific set program. And if they can't operate that program, they don't get the grant. But we've been in constant communication with the board over there. They've emailed, we've responded, they've submitted paperwork, we have forwarded it off to the appropriate state agencies, and it's just politics as usual on the part of a certain person.
Do they contact you every week?
No, they've emailed probably monthly. I've not heard from them in a while. I know that I had my office reach out to the board president about a week or so ago just to communicate. And we have submitted whatever paperwork we need to have submit to the state to hopefully get the grant going. But again, if they're not able to execute on the purpose of the original grant, then the state will, despite the fact they even have their workers' comp up to date, will not release a grant.
Understood. Can I ask you back on the workers' comp thing? They gave us something dated March 21/16. It said that the new balance was zero. There was a rescinded penalty or amount of $11,000. Was that an error on the state's end? Did you have to lobby on their behalf to get that balance wiped to zero? Can you explain what the discrepancy was there?
The discrepancy, I can't speak specifically about that document. What I can tell you is that at the time the grant was applied for, they had employees on the books that were not covered for workers' compensation insurance purposes.
Okay.
And then apparently those employees went off the books and they cleared up whatever lien or whatever it was that was the issue.
Okay, that was something they did, though. It wasn't like you. I was wondering if you had intervened on their behalf.
Well, they almost implied it was a mistake on the state's part, and you're saying that is not true. It was a mistake on their part. They didn't get the proper workers' comp taken care of.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I know you got to go. You have another appointment, 8:10. I got you right out on time. We appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks so much. Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi. Interesting note. I thought he was very much like I would hope that the rest of Congress would be with this president, the rest of Democrats would be. In his reaction to the State of the Union. You agree with that?
I agree with you, but there's not a chance.
Let's get something done, as opposed to that picture of Nancy Pelosi sitting there and everybody sitting on their hands. Nothing will ever get done. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be the reason that the Republicans don't have this debacle everybody's predicting coming up in November during the midterms.
And Andrew just showed me. I don't think we're allowed to share it on our social media because it's not a picture we took, etc. But I would just tell you, if you Google Nancy Pelosi scolds Democrats during Trump's speech, you will find her yelling at a Democrat. Yeah, there's a meme
for standing, right?
For standing and applauding some of the things that the president said.
She's got to go, right? I mean, if the Democrats want to win, I think she's got to go.